What's going on, you guys? It's your Huggable Hipster here. Welcome back to Soulsborne Academy. Don't mind the hunter in the corner. They're just here for your protection. Today is going to be the start of a new mini-series within the Soulsborne Academy series that I have, where we're going to be going over the psychology of death in Elden Ring. I'm going to be going over the psychology of death in Bloodborne and the Souls games, and even some Souls-likes as well, including Lies of P. Just before we get into the meat of this video, I just want to place a trigger warning because we are going to be talking about concepts, themes, death as a whole, psychologically, whenever it comes to these games. So please, viewer discretion is advised. When discussing death in Elden Ring psychologically, we have to first understand how it is being utilized as a motif. Whenever I think of the Godskin Apostles and whenever I look at their lore and I try to construct my own theory, there's always this kind of nagging feeling in the back of my brain that thinks this could possibly be the Reaper. Like the Godskin Apostles could be acting as the Reaper character within the world of Elden Ring and the lands between. For me, whenever I see that they are only killing gods and demigods, it signifies that they are only killing them in order to maintain balance with everyone who is below the gods. So if you have people who are dying around you, who are dying from old age, sickness, whatever the case may be, and you have gods that are living forever, it doesn't really, there's no equal balance of power, is there? When it comes to death and when it comes to the psychology of death, when we think about it in the terms of the Godskin Apostles and within Elden Ring, we think of death as this kind of fine-tuned balance, if you will. This is also where Malekith comes into play. I remember on Wednesday, I discussed Marika. I discussed kind of a little bit about her and how she was kind of selfish and power hungry. And the same goes here. She wants everyone to live. And this is my interpretation of her. So keep in mind that this, this might not be canon. It's just an opinion that I have on her lore. She wants so badly to be able to have everyone live. And this is from the trauma that she suffered in the shaman village. Going into her trauma and going into her wanting to save everyone, but then getting back to her village and it being too late plays a huge part into why she doesn't want anyone else to die. It's almost as if death has become a sin and no one can die because she wants everyone to live, knowing that she might be making them suffer more. Going back to the Godskin Apostles for a second, it's really fascinating to see their characters, and they're really kind of spooky in a way because the apostles and nobles really like to brag about their kills. So what they would do is they would kind of wear their kills, have their faces all over their outfits, and it would just garnish their robes. It would garnish kind of everything around them so people would know how many kills they had, or they would know that they were these god-slaying people, these god-slaying creatures that would bring wrath upon gods and demigods. This actually showed just how much fun, I don't think that that's the word I should be using, showing just how much pleasure they gained out of hunting the gods and the demigods. But what's really interesting about all of this, which kind of made my head spin wondering why, were the gods human or were the gods just gods? They were kind of the god. When we think of a god, we think of something that is an impenetrable being that cannot die. So when we go to the windmill section where we see the crones dancing, they're not really paying attention to you. They're NPCs that don't really bother you unless provoked. The skin is not of gods, but of man. There's a ghost that actually you can interact with, and it's he says that to a degree that the skin is human. It's not of a god. See, the Godskin Apostles, from what I'm gathering and from the research that I've done, were celebrated. They were celebrated by these crones who would skin people in honor of them, which, I mean, that's one way to celebrate, I guess. This is why the apostles are the boss in that area, because you are literally fighting the very thing that is being worshipped and a god themselves, or being worshipped like a god. Which begs the question, why do they have human skin on them? I'm so glad you asked that question. The Godskin Apostles and nobles would have to find another thing to kill because the power of death was removed. So they would have to kill anything that would probably have, like, if you had like 1% God in your blood, dead. Which makes me think that the Godskin Apostles were doing things way before the shattering. It only makes sense, right? Because you don't just start something as soon as it happens. You already have the thought planted or the action going way before an event takes place. So it's kind of, that's the way it's seen. And if we know anything about Elden Ring lore, and if we know anything about kind of the different factions and the ways certain events take place, the Godskin Apostles were most likely around doing their thing way before the shattering even happened. So here we go into the theory that I have, why death is such an important psychological thing to understand within Elden Ring. So remember what I said earlier in the video? Whenever Queen Marika doesn't want anyone to die, she just, wants everyone to live, basically because of what happened to her in the Shaman village, right? Okay, hold on to that thought. When the Divine Family defeated the Golemite Queen, they took ownership of the Great Rune, they kept it with Malekith, and they stored Destined Death away for safekeeping, okay? The Divine Family had no purpose anymore to utilize Destined Death. While Malekith was a protector of Destined Death, it was stolen along the way. Now we all know that with the help of the Black Knight assassins, Ranni was able to steal Destined Death. She used the stolen rune to slay Godwyn, which was kind of going against the greater will and the fingers and just upending the whole of it, as she so elegantly put. Once we defeat Malekith in the boss arena, we become the holder of Destined Death. That's where the theory comes in, right? Whoever slays Malekith, every single player that has slayed Malekith is a holder of Destined Death. He is reminding us, and this is, again, an ongoing theory that I've had for the past month and a half now, but I finally refined it, you guys, okay? This is a philosophical, psychological reminder to the player that death isn't something to be feared. It is something to hold on to protect. And while yes, I completely understand that Destined Death is a power from a great rune that allows its wielder to fully kill gods, we cannot deny the fact that it serves a much greater purpose in the lore than just that. Because when we see Destined Death, we see it as a concept. We see it as a psychological underpinning of where balance is being restored, kind of satisfying vagueness about all of this, of where we will never know all the full answers. Unless you're a narrative designer, unless you're Miyazaki, you are never going to know all of the full answers of all the bits and pieces of lore throughout this entire game. I was doing some research before this episode and I came across this article from Screen Rant, and there was a really interesting line that I read, I'll share with you guys, where it said, even in endings without the ring being restored, it's likely that Destined Death still returns to the lands between to rid the realm of the madness that accompanies immortality. I can't imagine the psychological impact of immortality and what that could have if it were an attainable thing. Because immortality is not something that is natural. It is not something that is, that's mentally, you are not mentally capable of thinking, wow, what would I do if I could live forever? And it's kind of a curse almost, if you think about it, within the Elden Ring universe, because in the lands between, death is almost like an equilibrium, right? Death is this thing of where you grow up, you get older, you become elderly, and then you die. It's something of where one thing happens, another thing happens, and then this thing happens. Death is a chain reaction. It's something that naturally progresses. So to have that stripped away from people, to be like, no, you are not in control of you, kind of like Miquella to a degree, forcing kindness amongst the valley, amongst everyone, and thinking, well, I'm going to force everyone. So the fact that we are returning Destined Death to the land after we beat Malekith, it's kind of a very calming feeling to a degree. You're restoring order basically back to what humanity is within the game. So when we look at the Godskin Apostles, let's look at them through a new lens of kindness, shall we? One where we see them as more of the Reaper, bringing balance to the world of Elden Ring and all of its inhabitants. But you guys, that was it for today's video. If you all like my face and what I do, please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell down below. May you find your worth in the waking world, you hunter. Stay casually nerdy, and I will see you all in the next video. Ubasa.